Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm so excited to have you here. This is my very first YouTube episode. This is the YouTube series for our Self-Compassion Looking Inward Redbird Therapy Initiative, which is an online free learning series across 3 different platforms. The first being this YouTube series. And then my wonderful colleagues are doing an Instagram series as well as a virtual workshop taking place in the spring. So please, if you haven't already, follow the link below in the description and it will take you to a registration page, and you can register for any updates and information about this amazing initiative and this awesome series. And we can't wait to have you follow along with us. So again, welcome to my channel. My name is Liz Bostwick. I am a therapist in training at Redbird Therapy Centre in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this YouTube series is going to be a 6-part YouTube series all about the importance of self-compassion. How do we cultivate self-compassion? What's important about it? What's the research for self-compassion? And, every episode we're going to be looking more in depth at a certain mental health issue and how self-compassion can really help to be kinder to yourself through that issue and try to find some strategies and coping skills to better help you through those struggles. So our first introductory episode today, we're going to be looking at self-compassion. We're going to be talking about what self-compassion is, some research into how some self-compassion helps us, and then we're going to be going through a guided meditation later on to help cultivate and practice self-compassion in your own life. And then finally, we're going to be looking at some journal prompts that'll help you to continuously reflect and think about self-compassion, maybe in a different way than you've thought about before. So I'm really looking forward to you joining us. So let's get started. So before we get into the introduction to self-compassion, we do need to go through a little bit of a disclaimer first. This series and this initiative is really for educational purposes only, and we really hope you get a lot out of this series. Unfortunately, this series is not a substitute for individual psychotherapy from a licensed psychotherapist. If you're watching this and you are in an immediate mental health crisis, please access appropriate care, emergency services, or call a crisis line. I have included a few Canadian crisis lines in the description below. Please call them and seek the support and help you need. Thank you. So, everyone just wants to allow themselves to get settled a little bit. I really encourage you to carve out 10 minutes or so for yourself to just be alone and take in this information. Please, whatever resonates with you, take it with you. If something doesn't resonate with you, just let it go. You're free to just take what you need and nothing more, nothing less. So if everyone's ready, let's just take a few deep breaths. And get started with what self-compassion is. So what is self-compassion? This is a question that a lot of different researchers have looked into, and a lot of people think they know what self-compassion is. They may be right. They may have a different idea than what the actual definition is. The actual definition is the ability to understand, love, and provide care to ourselves, to extend compassion inwards towards ourselves. So this idea really looks at the compassion that we can provide other people and finding ways to give that kindness, that love, and that care back to ourselves. So as we recognize the suffering of others, so too we can recognize the suffering in ourselves and provide ourselves some space and some grace to really provide ourselves that love that a friend could give us, but maybe we don't always give ourselves. So now we know self-compassion is this really awesome ability to provide ourselves that care and compassion that we extend towards the suffering of others, the ability to give it back to ourselves. But what does this magical self-compassion really do for us? So Dr. Kristen Neff, who is an amazing researcher who focuses a lot on self-compassion. I will link some of her books as well as her awesome website in the description below. But she took it upon herself to really find out what self-compassion can do for us. She found through a lot of different studies that self-compassion is a preventative buffer against anxiety, depression, relational issues, body image issues, burnout, self-criticism, negative self-talk, and a bunch of other really, really big struggles. She found out that overall, self-compassion is really important for our psychological well-being as well as our psychological flexibility, which is just a term that means our ability to take on new risks, our ability to work through struggles, and our overall kind of resilience and strength during these struggles. So we're going to start and look at a experiential exercise or a guided meditation that's really, really beneficial to cultivate and practice self-compassion when you're, in a moment of really feeling that negative self-talk or the inner critic inside of you, or really distressing emotional situations. It's a really good little break from that inner voice that's not always so kind. So this is called the self-compassion break, and it was developed by Dr. Kristen Neff. So we're going to go through kind of some of the background information about it. So Dr. Kristen Neff does suggest that there's these 3 different elements that kind of influence and create self-compassion. So she gets these from ancient Buddhist traditions that talk about mindfulness and talk about self-compassion. So the very first is this element of self-kindness versus self-judgment. So it's really a level of acceptance and being okay with yourself, being okay with the failures, and being okay with the flaws that are in your life, providing yourself this kindness instead of a judgmental tone. The second is the idea of common humanity versus isolation. So this is really the idea that we all understand that we're not in this alone. Suffering is a part of life. Everyone really suffers, and finding that common human experience instead of believing that you're experiencing all these emotions in isolation. And then finally, the third component or the third element is really mindfulness versus self-identification. So this really means that we're accepting and understanding and kind of letting the thoughts and letting that inner critic go instead of really trying to identify with those emotions and fuse or hold on to them. So this self-compassion break really encompasses these 3 elements in a small 5 to 10 minute practice. So we're going to go through that now, and I really hope it's helpful to you. So with that information guiding us, we're going to take a second here and take a few minutes and go through a self-compassion break together. So we have the information of the mindfulness element. We know a little bit about common humanity. We know the third element of self-kindness. So we're going to incorporate these into a self-compassion break. And we're going to go through that right now. So if you're watching and you feel comfortable, please take a moment to relax a little bit. Maybe ground your feet on the floor. Maybe if you want to close your eyes or take a soft gaze at the ground below you. Just relax your eyelids a little bit if that's more comfortable for you. Take a few breaths. And out. Let's get started. So I'd invite everyone to take a second and think of a situation or an experience in your life that's right now and really causing you a lot of stress or some anxiety or maybe some feelings of fear or feelings of lowness. Just take a second and call that emotion and call that situation to your mind. See if you can actually feel that distress or any of this anxiety in your body right now. Make sure these emotions aren't too intense. We want to be able to work through them kind of by ourselves as well. So not too intense, but something that is causing you a certain amount of anxiety. So Just have this in your mind as we go through this exercise. Say to yourself out loud or just in your head that this is a moment of suffering. This anxiety, this fear, this feeling of lowness, this is suffering. And say it out loud and name it. You can say, this is anxiety. I'm experiencing depression. I feel very stressed. This is the element of mindfulness. Expressing out loud, naming, and noticing your feelings, thoughts, and emotions. The next step is looking at common humanity. Call to mind the idea that other people feel this way. You're not alone in this moment. You're not the only person to feel this. Others have experienced the same feeling. Take a second, put your hand on your heart, maybe one on your stomach if that's comfortable for you. Feel the warmth and the comfort of your hands. If you want to give yourself a hug, feel free. If it feels comfortable, just putting a hand on your shoulder. Whatever form of touch or looking inward really feels comfortable for you, you can do that now. Now say out loud to yourself or again in your head, may I be kind to myself. May I offer myself self-compassion right now. If these phrases don't feel comfortable for you or they're not resonating, look inward and ask yourself what you need. Ask yourself what you need someone to tell you, and that someone can be you. You can tell yourself, in this moment, I have compassion for the suffering I feel. Take another deep breath. And really feel the warmth of your hands. Repeat that idea. Repeat that knowledge you have that you can provide yourself with self-compassion in this moment. Really soak it in. And when you're ready and you feel a little bit more resourced and a little bit more centered, take a deep breath. Maybe stretch your arms out, stretch your legs if that's comfortable and available to you. That was a self-compassion break. You can carve out space in your day, 2 to 3 minutes even, just getting alone and going through these 3 different elements. So we have the mindfulness, the common humanity, and the self-kindness. And if you're able to practice those, you're on your way to practicing self-compassion. So I just want to finish off today's episode with a little discussion about journaling and a journaling prompt. So journaling is a really important part of anyone's mental health journey. It really boosts creativity, helps us to organize our thoughts, and sometimes release emotions and feelings that are harder to articulate. So I really suggest anyone looking to journal to use a journal that's separate from an agenda or a workbook. So it's really just focused on your emotions and feelings. So our first journal prompt is simply write some kind things about yourself. So this may be easy to some people. It may be a little bit more difficult to others. But I really encourage you, if any difficult emotions or feelings come up while you're journaling about kind things, write those down as well, because they might be really helpful for our practice going forward. So that's it for my very first episode. I really hope you enjoyed today, and I really hope you got out a lot from this episode. Join me January 14th for my second episode. It'll be all about misconceptions and barriers to self-compassion. I'm wishing everyone a really happy holiday season and can't wait to see you next time.